Welcome to our lecture on cognitive development for our adolescents. This week, we're really going to look at a lot of Piaget's development. So Jean Piaget has been our cognitive development theorist for this entire class, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. We'll also look at some brain development. They're making huge jumps in cognitive ability, so we'll look at what their brains are doing. Then we'll look at some moral development, because as they grow cognitively, they also have the ability to grow morally and make kind of ethical and moral decisions. And then as adolescents are getting ready to graduate from formal education, high school, we'll look at some educational and vocational issues as well. So I think the best thing about this age is there's really a huge jump in cognitive ability. They can now think abstractly. They wrestle with moral and ethical issues. They probably cognitively are where they're going to be for the rest of their life. You've probably kind of hit your IQ or cognitive max in adolescence. That isn't to say that an old dog can't learn new tricks. We absolutely can. We learn, grow up, and develop through our entire lifespan. But in adolescence, you are definitely getting that ability to think more abstractly, which is really characterized by what adults are able to do. That kind of is a big mark between a child and an adult, is that kind of big shift in thinking, and adolescence is a huge shift. It's a huge transition, and they show this in adolescence. So Jean Piaget and his formal operational. So I wanted to put this image in so you could kind of see how we've really kind of developed cognitively through this entire class. We've looked at sensory motor, our little babies putting everything in their mouth, then our kind of preschoolers who are also emerging into kindergarten, starting to represent objects, use symbols and gestures, then just the concrete operational. They think operationally, they think logically as well. They're still very hands-on and concrete. And now we have a formal operational. So you're more systematic. You're able to take tangible, concrete objects and then think more abstractly about them. So algebra is a great example of this, using a symbol. So x equals 7, and then being able to process that within some kind of equation. They also, outside of math, they understand meaning, allegory, metaphors. So reading comprehension and the ability to understand literature and fiction and nonfiction is much greater, and that comprehension has really excelled at this point in that they understand and they have the brain development in order to get a metaphor or an allegory, something like that. In science as well, they can develop by hypothesis. They're looking at the world around them. They're using that concrete operational, and then they're building on it by finding support, finding evidence, doing research, and engaging in critical thinking. So in this age, they're really building upon all of the other stages that they've had. Without the concrete operational, pre-operational, and sensory motor, and without education and family to support you through all these stages, you might not fully be able to understand the formal operational. So you need to go through all of the stages, and that's why Jean Piaget theorized this as a stage theorist, is you go through all of these stages in order to do some more abstract thinking. So brain development, what are we working on in brain development? So we're processing information really, really differently. So once again, transition period between kind of childhood and adulthood. And so we know that cognitive processing is really efficient. The gray matter and white matter changes. So I've been talking this whole time about pruning and neural connections being lost or pruned, cut out if you don't use them. So we know that the gray matter and white matter aren't making a lot of changes. But we also know that the frontal cortex and the limbic system is being shut down. You wouldn't think so. You'd think it might light up, but actually the limbic system and the frontal cortex kind of shut down, which leads to these crazy ideas with impulsivity and less motivation, and they're not thinking about long-term planning or goals. And that's kind of unfortunate, because in adolescence, we're asking you to do just those types of things. Where do you want to go to college? What do you want to do after college? You have to get good grades in your sophomore and junior year in order to get into a good college. You need to take the SAT, the ACT. You need to get good grades on that. You need to be in clubs. All of these types of things. We have a lot of pressures, and we have a lot of long-term planning and goals that go into those types of things. But if you've ever spent any time with an adolescent, they are quite impulsive, they're very emotional, they're very distractible as well. And so this can give us a kind of push and pull between the huge cognitive leaps that they're being able to do, in that they can think harder, they can think longer, they can think abstractly. But on the other hand, and we'll talk more about this in psychosocial, their brain is telling them to be impulsive and emotional as well. So we need this brain development and we need this cognitive development in order to kind of have this transition period. And Oakland, he was one of our theorists. And so we know that in this kind of theory that they were coming up with is that inexperience with cognition and lack of life experiences makes teens idealistic. Absolutely. You know, there's not typically a lot of black and white in the world. There's a lot of gray, but teens are definitely seeing more of the black and white. There's good, there's bad, there's wrong, there's evil, and then there's the good and the light. And they might not see the gray in between. And so they're very idealistic. They'll often want to be a nurse or a doctor or a teacher or something like that in order to make a difference in the world, which is a fantastic part about our teens and our adolescents. They're often highly critical, especially of family members, parents, anybody older than them, and they're very critical of themselves as well. And because they are dealing with issues of impulsivity, a lot of that critical nature might come out verbally, saying things that they maybe wish they hadn't said or they haven't learned through the process of just being alive and understanding how to kind of couch your criticism, be it constructive and not just criticism for the sake of criticism. They're often egocentric, and we talked a lot about egocentrism with our younger kids as well, but now we're also seeing that this age is very egocentric, but they're self-conscious in that they invent an imaginary audience. So they think that everybody's paying attention to them and everybody's looking at them and they think that their hair is weird, or why did they say that, or that they go home and they think about what this teen said the whole time. It's as you age, you learn that most people are more concerned with themselves and what they are doing, and they're not really going home and agonizing about what somebody else did. But it is a facet of egocentrism. So we know that our younger kids really can't take on the perspective of other people. But we know now that adolescents can. They definitely can. They know that other people have emotions. They know that other people have perspectives and backgrounds and histories and things like that. But they're so self-conscious that they think that all the people around them are really paying more attention to them than they are. They often think that they're invulnerable, and this goes with the brain development and the impulsivity issues. They think, I can't get hurt. If I jump off of this roof, I'm definitely going to land on the ground. I'm going to land on my feet. I'm not going to get hurt at all, and then most people know if you jump off the roof of your house, you're probably going to break something or sprain something as well. It takes to kind of unnecessary risks or kind of risky behaviors, either sexually or with relationships or with other people, or just kind of daredevil physical development as well. They can be quite hypocritical as well, and this kind of goes with the critical thing as well. They might be more critical about the people around them, but maybe not so much with themselves. All right, and then we have Kohlberg, and this is another theory about moral development. So the great thing about our teens is that they are having these cognitive jumps and the ability to think abstractly. And so what this theorist did is he made up a moral story. And then he read it, or he performed it for teens, and he studied their responses to see where their morality had developed. So a younger teen versus an older teen, a younger teen might have a lot of ideas about obeying rules, like if it's wrong, it's wrong. And then an older teen, or somebody who's progressed more through their moral development, can make a judgment based on complex factors, like, the classic story of you're starving and you need to feed your family. Is it wrong to steal a loaf of bread or not? So depending on where you are morally and in your moral development, you might make different choices depending on where you are kind of in that spectrum of moral development that's developing. The interesting thing, though, is that cognition and moral development do not always develop at the same rate. So somebody who is very cognitively advanced might morally be still struggling with those areas. And vice versa, maybe somebody who's scoring low on their cognitive ability and cognitive aptitude and maybe even IQ might have incredibly high moral development. So that we know that they're not on the same path. They might go, like one might be up and one might be down. We know that cognition plays a part into moral development and your ability to think abstractly and understand moral stories. But we also know that moral development is kind of its own type of thing. It doesn't necessarily reside, you don't have to have amazing cognition in order to have amazing moral development. They might be developing somewhat independently of each other. All right, so now you're in high school. So what is the point of high school really for our adolescents? So with our middle schoolers and our early middle childhood and our early childhood, so children that are in elementary school and middle school, we're really trying to get a lot of knowledge into them. So we're trying to really work on a lot of taking facts in, taking thoughts in, taking concepts in, and concretely understanding them and being able to retain a lot of the information. And that's why adults can often do so bad in that game, Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader? Because we haven't retained all of the state capitals or what kind of genus in school is, a gopher snake in. Like we haven't memorized all of those things. We haven't retained all of that memory. Whereas for our middle school or our middle childhood and early childhood, we're trying to get as much knowledge into them. We want them to understand the world around them. Now our adolescents have a lot of this knowledge. Hopefully they're retaining it as well. They have fairly good memories at this age. Their brain is allowing for that. And they also are starting to hopefully make plans, although sometimes their brain development is working against them, plans about what's going to happen when they graduate. So typically you're 18 years old now when you're graduating from formal public schooling, when you're graduating from high school. So what are your kind of choices? We're we're preparing students for more education or technical education or employment. So more education going to Palomar, a community college, a 2-year college, or a 4-year college in order to get more education. Like if you wanted to be a teacher or a doctor or a nurse, anything like that, you're going to need additional degrees in order to do that. And then technical education. So it's typically a multi-year sequence. It's got academic knowledge and then technical and occupational knowledge as well. So my cousin who recently graduated a couple years ago is kind of doing technical education in geology because she lives in the Midwest in Ohio, and fracking is a really big industry there. And so she's getting technical education in order to go into the fracking and mining industry in Ohio. So she's not going to do a 4-year course in geology, but she's getting a lot of academic understanding about geology, and specifically in the Midwest and Ohio, what kind of like gases and rocks that we have, and then also technical and occupational knowledge as well, so that she can go ahead and graduate with a career in the mining and fracking industry that they have in the Midwest. So there's also in California, because I'm teaching in California, this is kind of what we have, which is a multiple pathways approach, which I think is a great approach in our state to all the various things that people throughout the state might be graduating with the hope in helping them for success after high school. So we want everybody to have success in high school. So what kind of post-secondary, so we're in secondary school when you're in high school, what kind of post-secondary opportunities are open for you? College degrees, certificate programs, formal employment training, apprenticeship, and military service are some of the things that we're giving people additional pathways to. Really wanting to motivate students to take the academics and apply that to a career or a technical or a college degree education as well. And I've seen that a lot in high school. I live in Oceanside, so I have some friends, children who are now in high school, and I've definitely seen that we're opening up STEM schools, charter schools that are looking at the arts or at STEM or something like that in order to challenge them academically, but also kind of give them a wide range of possible opportunities that they have after they graduate. This also allows for students who are in need to help succeed in their program and help to graduate from high school by giving them supplemental instruction, either at an additional school, there's continuing education schools, or within high school, more support, because really our in California and Oceanside and whatever city you want to, you want all of the children to graduate or have a GED. That's a really kind of necessary step in employment or post-secondary education, is to get the support that you need in order to succeed and to graduate with a GED or a high school diploma. We also, this Pathways is trying to allow schools to adapt this approach for local circumstances by choosing themes relevant to their community. So, you know, when most schools along the coast have surf teams, that's a great way to take physical development and people that live very, very close to the coast and have that be their PE class as well. But that probably wouldn't work in Sacramento or Modesto or something like that. But I've heard, like in Tahoe schools, they have like a kayaking, like boating PE class instead of a surfing one to teach, because they're on a lake, so they're able to do that. I've heard mountain biking in more mountainous regions like near Shasta and Big Bear. So taking the local circumstances and the local geography around them and being able to adapt that in something that's relevant to their community. You know, if you're a surfer, you're probably not going to want to go play baseball or take a regular GE class when you, a regular PE class, when you have the option to do something that you already love, to be supervised safely in it and maybe to learn a little bit more about it as well. So that's a way that they're able to use their local circumstances, local flavor that you have, and apply it to high school in order to get kids really excited about learning or about staying in school. So what kind of influences your achievement, your ability to graduate and go on to some other opportunities after you graduate? A lot of it is the quality of school, and I have joined my daughters, even though they're only in kindergarten, their PTO, just because Oceanside is working on getting more support services and more funding and things like that in order to meet the needs of all the really diverse learners in our neighborhood. So the quality of school definitely plays a part in it. You want to have most of your population graduating. You want them to do well in the state standardized testing. And the better program you are in, the better that will encourage you to do better into school and to learn more as well. We do know that families, peers, support, friends, community also affect school performance. And we'll talk more about the kind of myriad influences that an adolescent can have in their psychosocial development later on in next week's lecture. But we do know that stress from all of those types of things can affect school performance. And we've talked a lot about socioeconomic status, single parent households, working with your peer group, bullying, things like that. So all of those types of things can be a stressor for an adolescent and can affect your school performance, your ability to go to school, stay in school, and ultimately get that diploma or that GED. So how can we help? I think a lot of times people, and I met with a friend recently, we were both at the same wedding, and she was actually looking to go part-time, and I was like, what? Your kids are so much older now. Like typically when you think about parents going part-time, it's when they have infants and toddlers in the house, you know, and they need to stay really close. And she said, I feel like my 3 kids, now all of them being adolescents, they need me even more now. Like they need me to take them to sports. They need me to help with this really difficult homework that I don't even understand, pick them up, talk to them. Sometimes the girls and even the boys are so emotional when they get after school. She's like, I really feel like sometimes I need an afternoon or 2 free each weekday in order to kind of see them and meet them and kind of meet their needs. I'm not saying that families need to go part-time, but you still need to stay involved. Even though they can get themselves up, they can drive, maybe they can get them to sports, they can sign themselves up for things. They have a lot of adult skills. They're still going through a transition period where they need peer or family support in order to kind of manage the stress that they're dealing with and also show them how to be responsible. Because we know their brain development is kind of working against them. They're a little bit impulsive, they're a little bit emotional. So teaching them and showing them and modeling and encouraging them to be responsible and to think ahead and to do the things that they're supposed to really helps them play a part in that eventual goals of graduating from high school and then going on to whatever opportunities are next. So in conclusion, we know that our adolescents mature cognitively and they're showing a lot of changes in moral development. So we know that they're going to have the ability to think abstractly, X equals Y, Y equals this. They can think science, they can think about reading, they can read a lot better, and then that also helps them with some of their moral development as well. They still need a lot of strong support from either family influences or environmental influences if they don't have a lot of family influences in order to be successful and to reach higher cognitive development and to go on to those opportunities that might start opening up for them after they graduate or get their GED from high school. All right, this has been the lecture for this week. I will see you guys online.